the next two on your own, come back and find the answers. Thank you for coming back, and let's have a look at the answers for the next two. We have a quadratic divided by a quadratic, so that means I have to factor quadratic, there we go. I'm going to have to factor the numerator and the denominator. So I have on my numerator 2y plus 5 and y minus 2. And my denominator, I have y plus 5 and y minus 2. All right, so I can cross out my y minus 2 because that's my 1. So that leaves me with 2y plus 5 over y plus 5. Yes, that is the simplest form. Now, what are my non-permissible values? X cannot equal. Well, let's look at them again. I have y plus 5. That's my first factor. So y equals negative 5. So I have negative 5. My second factor is y minus 2. So y equals 2. And those are my non-permissible values and my simplest form. Let's look at the next one. I have polynomial. And I have a quadratic. There we go. Making a few spelling errors as I'm trying to go quickly with my writing. I'll try and slow that down. All right, so I have what's common between 6 and 2. Well, the 2 is, so I'm going to take that out. So I have 3 minus m in the numerator. And then the denominator, I have the quadratic. It's a perfect square. M minus 3, m plus 3. M minus 3 and 3 minus m. I'm going to take out a minus 1. So my 2 becomes a minus 2. Then I can change that m minus 3 divided by m minus 3 and m plus 3. So now I can, there's my 1. M minus 3 over m minus 3 is the equivalent of 1, so I can take those out. So my simplest form is minus 2 divided by m plus 3. Okay, my non-permissible values. Let's find out what m cannot equal. Go back to my factored form right here. I'm going to pull them both out. M minus 3 equals 0, so m equals positive 3. Pull out my m plus 3 equals 0, and m equals negative 3. So my non-permissible values is plus and minus 3. So I have simplest form and my non-permissible values. Let's consider x squared, 16x squared minus 9y squared divided by 8x minus 6y. What is happening here? Well, I have three things that I have to find. I have to find the non-permissible values for x, simplify the expression, and then thirdly I'm going to have to evaluate my x's and y's at x equaled 2.6 and y equals 1.2. Show two ways to determine the answer. Okay, so let's start with non-permissible values. Well, if I look at it, I have 8x minus 6y. I'm going to take out something common, so that's a 2. So I have 4x minus 3y. Now that's two different factors. So I have 4x equal to 0, and then I also have minus 3y equal to 0. So if my x equaled 0, would that negate the whole thing? No, it wouldn't. So that actually doesn't work. So let's go back and look at it again. I think what I'm going to do is simplify it first and see if there's factors that are going to work better. So I'm going to try that first. Because even if x is 0, it wouldn't necessarily make the whole expression on the bottom 0. So let's factor the top. So I have 16x squared, so that's perfect square. So I have 4x minus 3y and 4x plus 3y. Okay, now I can take out my 2 on the bottom, and that leaves me with 4x minus 3y on the bottom. So I have, to simplify, I have 4x minus y, 3y, 4x minus 3y. So 4x plus 3y over 2 is my simplest form. So I've done part B first. Now, is there anything that will make my denominator a non-permissible value? Well, it will, but instead of just isolating like I did with multiplication, I can't isolate out each individual one as a factor because they come as a pair, because there's the negative sign in between. So I'm going to take the whole thing, 8x minus 6y, and set it to 0. And what I'm going to do is isolate each. So I'm going to take 8x equals 6y. Whoops. 6y, there we go. And now I can isolate out my x equals 6 divided by 8 times y, which is equal to 3 over 4y. So x cannot equal either of those things. Now I can do the same thing to find out what the y is. Instead of solving for x, I'm going to solve for y. So 8x minus 6y equals 0, minus 6y equals minus 8x. Y equals minus 8 over minus 6x. So that's 8 over 6x, which is also equal to 4 over 3x. So for my non-permissible values now I have x cannot equal, I'm going to take it to my smallest, 3/4 y, and y cannot equal 4/3 x. You have to isolate it in this manner because of the negative sign. If there was a positive sign, it would have been the same thing. It's a little different when there's multiplication, which we saw in all of the earlier examples, but you need to be very clear that you don't do that and isolate them separately when finding the non-permissible values when there is a negative or a positive or a plus sign. So subtraction, addition, isolate them together. Now we still have to do part C, which is evaluating the expressions with 2.6 and 1.2 for each of the variables. So we just go ahead and plug that in. So I'm going to take my original, or I can take the simplified. So if you take the original, you're going to do 16 times 2.6 squared minus 9 times 1.2 squared, all divided by 8 times 2.6 minus 6 times 1.2. And that's going to give me my answer. Now, you're saying, will that give me a different answer than what if I put it in the simplified form? Well, let's see. So we know that when we do that, excuse me, that this whole answer comes out to 95.2 divided by 13.6, which is equal to 7. Well, let's see if the other one, the simplified one, comes the same way. So I would do 4 times 2.6 plus 3 times 1.2 divided by 2. What does that equal to? Well, it's 14 divided by 2, which is equal to 7. So it doesn't matter which way you do it, if you plug it into the original equation or if you put it into the simplified equation, you should get the same answer. If you didn't, then there's some calculation error that you made. So that's 2 different ways that we actually could do it.